inviting me. That's the first thing I want to say. Although, of course, the invitation was also because of something else, but it's really nice to have the opportunity to present today. So I thought I'm going to talk a little bit about my work and the way in which maybe I could contribute to the department in terms of teaching, in terms of my research, and also give a little bit of context of my background. Coming from a different environment from Europe, it might be quite useful to elaborate a little bit more on that in terms of my background and teaching. So in the past, I've been working in all these different roles, and I thought I listed because I do think that in the dance sector at the moment, we all do these things at the same time, so we need to be quite versatile as dancers. And I've been really lucky to be able to do all these various things, not always at the same time, but one after the other. And so a choreographer, dancer, videographer, teacher, facilitator, these are quite familiar. But I also think I want to say that I see myself as a collaborator. So not only necessarily with other artists, but also in terms of how I work with students. I really like working in collaboration. And we've done a lot of collaboration with Merge already, for example. So it's not only the choreographic process, but also thinking about their careers or when I supervise. I think we're much more, I see myself as a mentor who shares ideas and knowledge, but then we work together towards what they want to achieve. Then also I'm looking at myself as a practices researcher. So I do creative practice, choreography, video, dance, all of that. But then I also like to reflect on that theoretically and give conference papers, for example. So that process of analyzing what I actually do as an artist, I find is really interesting. So while I'm creating, I'm not busy with theory at all. Then the piece is done, but then afterwards I find it really interesting what has happened in that process. And then also I've been since several years a board member at Teeswelle Dance, which is a dance company in the north of England. And there I'm one of the board of directors of 4 at the moment. And our aims at the moment are to support continuing professional development for dance artists in the region. So we have a pot of money that we give to various people. They can apply to a project, but it needs to be focused on youth dance, which is 14 to 25 years. That was the original mission of that company, and they're keeping that. Or it could be to support any projects that are engaging youth. So it could be community projects and things like that. And the main goal is to increase the infrastructure of dance in the north of England, which is very different. So that's England, you could say, with the north, and you have the south. Here's London, everything's very well supported, really busy. And then you get to the north and it just drops all off. So that's been really exciting to be part of that. So my background and a little bit about my teaching philosophy. So I've been studying a 3-year-long somatic teaching practice education, which is called Anna Herman. And it's anything else than gymnastics, that you know, there's no tumbling, no flick-flack, no anything like that. It is one of the first somatic therapy methods, and I'll talk in a moment a little bit more about that. And I think that kind of holistic method really has influenced all my other teaching. I even think that when I work video dance, I do this site-specific work, that kind of embodied experience is part of that as well. So I don't think you can separate it in anything that I'm doing anymore. When I trained at a conservatoire in various techniques, in all modern and contemporary dance techniques, and of course I also had ballet and jazz, and also teaching methods. And one thing that was really particular there is that I had 2 years of interdisciplinary training, or weekly training or education with other disciplines and art forms. And I think that's where my love for collaboration is coming from, because although in the beginning thought it was all a little bit strange, as you do when you're a student, that then I really enjoyed the new situations that we create just by collaborating with other disciplines. And then the last background that I'd like to talk about is my MA. So I did an MA which was designed for dance artists who had a career as dancers or artistic directors or choreographers, and then who were looking to work into higher education. So it was all professional artists, but then how do we make this work in higher education where there may be more contextualization needed, kind of also project management and more theatrical background as well. So it was a combination between a conservatoire in the Netherlands and a university in the UK. It was quite a specific degree, and I think that really has helped me a lot. And there my idea of practice is theory and theory eliminates practice, that kind of interlinking between the two. I think I've been really been influenced by that. Oh, I think it just changes by itself.
It jumps by itself.
So, in terms of teaching philosophy, what's the Anna Herman idea? That is really based on a humanistic approach towards dance in society, meaning that dance can have an effect in society, it plays a big role in our community, and it can empower people to develop themselves, but also to develop others, and I think that's really important to me. And for students also, I'm really keen to help them to develop an individual movement language to find their own voices. So, because I think if you go out and you graduate, then it's about you, and it's not about you doing something else that somebody else taught you necessarily, but that you find yourself in that. That's really important, I think. So the Anna Herman method, oh, you don't see it exactly, but it just says Anna Herman method on top. So it's one of the oldest traditional somatic body therapies, and it's still taught now, so the school is actually still growing, which is great. And it's come from the 1920s movement, which was in Germany and in Europe, the kind of well-being movement. There was a focus on the body, and of course at the same time the industrialization was bringing people into awful situations, and therefore that movement came, how do we actually get people into focusing their body and taking care of themselves. There was also a women's movement involved in that, no corset, for example.
Wow.
And that's where the breathing came, the breathing therapy, that, you know, we're allowed to breathe, and I think that was kind of the impulse for that movement. And there was also alongside an educational movement in Germany, maybe Immanuel Kant, it might be something that you've heard in some educational theories, which was about empowerment, empowering people, teaching them the tools to be able to learn. And that's a kind of influence. So the Second World War then, however, interrupted many of these movements, which were really strong. There were a lot of people working at the same time with various influences, but as you can imagine, many had to leave the country, they were forced to leave the country, or other things happened to them. For example, Laban went to the UK, went to Dartington at the time because he had to leave as well. So there are four distinct areas of influence, and I thought I'd bring them down. So the left one is more of a functional one. Benzendick and Günther are representatives from that. And I think the closest you could compare it to is Pilates. It's kind of, it's including the breath, but it still has a functional. Next one is, you maybe have heard Karl Orff, Camilla Burana, the choir. Yeah. So the kind of rhythmic and musical coming from the theatre and health. And then of course the whole dance strand, Isadora Duncan, Laban, Mary Rickman, maybe Greg Paluca, is her name as well, she's a German artist. And then the one where Anna Herman is part of is the holistic and organic expressionist. And I think you could almost say that things that are coming from there, they are combined there. So you have the artistic part, but you also have the functional part. And it's the kind of synergy between body and mind. So I find that quite important, so that it's not gymnastics to explain that. And what's quite interesting, however, is that many of these people have never written down anything. For example, Anna Herman, she had a whole script, but then her school in Berlin was completely bombed out and destroyed.
Wow.
So she moved back to Cologne, rebuilt the school, but she said, I'm not going to write down anything anymore. I'm just going to give it from one to the other. And that's how almost it is still. There's still no school book about the method, it's just from one to the other. So I'm quite fascinated that that actually is still like that. And I can understand that she said, then, you know, but I think they were like, you never know what's going to happen again, I'm not going to try again. So the principles of these body and mind mind synergy and the mind influences the body and vice versa. To be in contact with oneself and to express oneself in a natural and true manner in all one does. That's a quote from Elsa Gintler, because she did write something, but she was a student from Anne Hammond, so it's the same thing. So it's organic, it's holistic, and it uses the two principles, two forces, which we know from other modern techniques as well, but it's trying to find the flow and only using as much effort as possible. And we've been trying that a lot, I think, to also finding the kind of natural movement. So as I said, there's a combination of functionality and artistic things. So I've been trained in body therapy, in breathing therapy, but also in injury prevention, multi-development. There's also rhythmics and music, which are now in breakdown, so there was a lot of them. And what I find really interesting is that it also, this kind of, method that was developed in the last century, nicely connects with critical feminist approaches to dance education, like Stinks and Shapiro, that you may be aware of, who are thinking about empowering of dancers and what that means, the kind of old-fashioned traditional system of teaching, we teach others, to having more of a democratic approach. So concretely, the experience I have, I thought I'd make a list of the things that I might be able to contribute. So of course it's Laban, and for me Laban is something that I think helps immensely to develop dance skills, because you can get aware of your natural movement, of your natural efforts, how you use your body, and then you can get aware of the others and try those as well. And use the choreography and composition, of course, in analysis. Then in improvisation, I'm really interested in this instant choreography of a whole, so working with scores, but also working with other disciplines, working with maybe concepts from other disciplines. We've just had a workshop with design and use design principles and how that would work in a compositional improvisation context. And also that nexus between performer, movement, sound and space. So as a performer, I've been involved in a lot of site-specific performance as well, and promenade performances with audience interaction, for example. So what do I do when the audience doesn't do what I want to do? Where are they going? So, and that's a really interesting, exciting process of performance, I think. Then I've been trained in contemporary technique, and I would categorize my technique in Leron Humphrey with elements of release and floor work. But I also teach only a pure floor work class. And I've been trained in flying low, which is maybe something you've heard with David Zambrano. He's Argentinian, I think. And well, it goes down, very lots of movement. But I've also been doing release the beast, and forgive the term, but that's what he's named it. And that's really a whole class that's only taking place on the ground. And what is nice about this is that it has a lot of lab and principles involved in it, and one exercise after the other builds on that, but in a fluid way. So we're not stopping and repeating, but it already becomes a phrase. That's how it's building it up. And mostly because he had a back injury as well, and that's how we often develop new styles. And Tony Basic, I want to name his name, Tony Basic. Then I've done modern jazz. So I teach jazz, which is highly contemporary, I think, but with the phrasing of it is really jazz-like, and the musicality, so I enjoy teaching that as well. And then a part that I've not been doing in the last year, but I have been writing the courses on top the first 3 years in TSI, teaching practice and health and well-being, really looking into fitness. So we've done fitness programs for students individually, so we screen them, or I screen them, develop programs for them individually or as a group. And also safe and effective dance teaching practice. There's a certificate now in England which students can do as well, which somehow gives them, that everybody knows that they know how to work with people in a safe way, doing a warm-up, a cool-down, working with different type groups. So you can be sure that people really know about motor development and safe practice. And that's been really, really fun because working and thinking about developing a class for primary school kids or ballet for women over 50s is, of course, completely different. Now, thirdly, I've mentioned already site-specific choreography is something I really enjoy. And working also with music and rhythm and dance. And especially also again, for example, if you would be working with the choir and dance, how would the movement of the choir become part of the choreography? So not the separation, the choir sings and we are dancing there, but when they're moving there, is the audience moving there? Are they becoming something of that? I find it really exciting. Or working with new technology, so we've done a performance with MP3 players, and every audience member gets an MP3 player, so becoming that the audience members are the ones who are creating the choreography, because the MP3 player tells you have to walk over here, and now lift your arm, and look at that person over there, and now if you've chosen that one, follow that one, and you maybe go down to the ground. So if you have two different tracks, you can, so this kind of different